2019. Tracy, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Councilmember Lauren. Here. Councilmember New,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cowan,
Here.
Mayor Biazzi.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jean Ashdown, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the agenda?
Mayor and council, there are no changes to the agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, we'll move on to council and staff comments. Councilmember Lauren.
Hey, November 7th was a WRA executive meeting in Knights Landing. It was beautiful. November 11th, Veterans Day, I attended the Winters Veterans exhibit at the Winters Museum. I also attended the Chamber Mixer, which was the new Winters Collective. On November 14th, I attended the orientation meeting for Valley Clean Energy along with Mayor Pro Tem Cowan and City Manager John Donlevy. Although Mayor Pro Tem Cowan and I were there a little bit longer than you were. Yeah.
I was waiting to hear about that.
I know. No, it was long. It was long. It was a great meeting. On November 16th, I attended a Democracy Winners meeting and heard this guest speaker, Attorney Andre LaRouche, talk about federal civil rights cases. On November 18th, I met with City Manager over tonight's agenda. I also met with the WRA Executive Board again at the Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District in Woodland. And that brings me to today. I did want to just make a comment about climate action, the discussion that we've been having about having a committee or a commission. And I was vexed to try to remember that we've discussed it and that we had talked about the action committee. And I found it in the 416 notes in the packet on page 32, and again in the May 7th. So it's been something that on the May 7th when we directed it to be a climate commission. But yeah, I knew that we had discussed those, but I didn't remember the date, so I looked them up. Anyway, when that comes up again, we'll bring it up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On November 14th, which was Thursday, I attended the LPCCC Floorview Creek Coordinating Committee board meeting. It was held in Davis at the Veterans Club Hall on Thursday, December 12th. There will be another meeting of the LPCCC in Vacaville. Last night, I attended a special Transportation District Board meeting in Woodland. The special meeting normally not held at this date. It was a joint meeting by distance between RT, which is the Sacramento Regional Transit, and Yolo County Transportation District. The main topic was trying to agree on having a new transportation bridge, public option between the UC Davis and
Med Center.
Med Center and one other. Anyway, long and short of it was these two meetings were coinciding, one in Sacramento and the RT board and one in Woodland. Woodland chose to enter the agreement and created a partnership member, and RT continued their meeting without making any decision, which is makes things a little awkward. But hopefully there will be a public transportation link across
Councilmember New.
All right, thank you. On Thursday, November 7th, I attended the SACOG Land Use and Natural Resources meeting in Sacramento. On the 14th, I met with the CEO of Yola Habitat Conservancy to discuss the agenda. On the 11th, which was Saturday, I met with Federica Patrice, who's interested in the pool use and how we can get it used more frequently, longer during the year, whatever. And actually, she scheduled another meeting Monday, so I'll do that. Wednesday, the 13th, met with a person who was concerned about north area planning, and talked half an hour about what's going on or what's not going on. On Monday, the 18th, SACOG had a special meeting. I attended it online, which was nice because I didn't have to drive for 2 hours to get back and forth. But mainly there were some last minute changes in the planning for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and so we had to make some adjustments and vote on that. Then on the 18th, which was last night, met with YOLO Habitat Board, and we had a quick meeting and returned here. And the other thing that I've done is I've been spending the week, not all the time, but occasionally riding around town on my bike, looking at all the places that we don't have trees. And I'm going to just keep harping on that for a while. I know that people are concerned about leaves now. People are concerned about water, but I think we also have to be concerned about, keeping the place cooler, the town cooler, and our carbon footprint, which I think the trees would help. So I'll keep reminding everybody about that, and maybe we have to have some little push on getting more people to plant trees. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Callen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've just got a couple of things. On the 14th, as Councilmember Lauren mentioned, I also attended the Valley Clean Energy Orientation and then the board meeting. We definitely have a lot to learn on that one. There's a lot of information there. And I've also attended a couple of Youth Day meetings. They're now officially incorporated, and they have filed for their own 501c3, so no longer piggybacking on the chamber. And they're working with the high school graphic arts class on doing a logo. And then the theme for this year's Youth Day was selected at the last meeting. It's going to be Youthfully Ever After. And that was submitted by Spring Howitzer, I think is her name. And don't forget about the tractor parade and the tree lighting is coming up on Saturday, December 7th.
Good, thank you. On November 7th, I had a fun interview with a writer from Comstock Magazine, asking questions about our revitalization, what we've done to get that going, and how that happened. So hopefully we'll see an article come out in the future. On the 12th, I attended the Planning Commission meeting. We had 2 agenda items. One was on the property that goes around the LDS church. We're looking at a project there for 18 homes, where the Planning Commission approved a PD overlay and a tentative map and continued their design review. We'll be seeing part of that coming to us soon, I believe. And there was also another agenda item was on the Olive Grove development, where the developer was asking for approval for a design review for one of the lots in phase 2. On the 18th, I met with city manager to go over the agenda. On the 18th, I also went to the Winters Peta Creek Committee meeting. Unfortunately, they did not have a quorum. They couldn't conduct any official business. And then after that, I had an informal meeting with Kate Laddish, and we had a great discussion about universal design and accessibility issues and what we can do to further that in our city planning and development. So thank you for your time on that, Kate. So thank you, all the council members, for all your time and putting on these committees. We appreciate it. Okay, now, I can find my agenda. Move on to public comments. Does anyone in the audience have anything that is not on tonight's agenda they would like to speak to? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Mayor and council, one item on the consent calendar, the minutes from November 5th.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passes unanimous. We have no presentations. We move right through the agenda to discussion item 1, resolution 2019-47, which is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Winters authorizing an application for SB2 planning grants, program funds. City Manager Danny.
We need to turn the studio out.
They're going to sleep. They're just done. They go to sleep so quickly.
How are we doing?
It's good.
Mayor and council, tonight, the staff's requesting the approval of resolution 2019-47, which would allow us to submit a SB2 planning grant application to the State Housing and Community Development Department. What I'd like to do is maybe walk through a little bit what SB2 is, some of the priorities, and some of the things that we're doing to try and incorporate it into a planning program, which I hope will allow us to meet a number of community goals that I know that a lot of people have brought up over the past number of months. So what is SB2? Adopted in March of this year. It has basically 5 goals, and this gets right into the stage priority on housing. The idea of accelerating housing production, streamlining the approval process, facilitating affordable housing for all income groups, the idea of promoting development consistent with state planning priorities, and we'll talk a little bit about what those planning priorities are, and the idea of ensuring that there's equity in how the monies are distributed. Much of the time when it comes to grants, there's no real secret to how grants are distributed. There are basically 3 political geographic areas in California. There's Southern California, which makes up almost 70% of the population. When grants go, guess what? 70% of the money goes there. And you've got the coastal areas, basically from Santa Barbara to the San Francisco Bay Area, 20%, 10% into the rest of the state. This grant isn't that way. It's a straight grant application based on prior of population. So just so that everybody's on the same page, there are grant key agencies in the SB2 process. One is SACOG, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, HCD, which is the State Department of Housing and Community Development, and there's DLF, which is the State Department of Finance, which basically works for the governor. In total, what staff's working on is a proposal for almost a $395,000 planning program that ultimately is going to help us get a couple of things done. First and foremost is the idea of community outreach and engagement. It's unequivocal that over the past number of months, we've heard from folks that want to be engaged, they want to participate in the planning process, and they absolutely want to be heard. The importance of looking at our general plan and updating some key elements. People talk about the 1992 general plan and the idea that we could go through and do a very strategic update of key policies, which also includes all the engagement and participation of folks is important. The idea of doing some type of specific planning for undeveloped, unentitled, and underdeveloped properties within the city limits. And I'll kind of hit on this, but what we're stressing is only the city limits. There's been a lot of discussion about our sphere area, concerns about annexation. That's completely off the table. We're focusing only on and within the city limits. The idea of getting to a climate action plan. We've got a draft. Actually, we've got our Civic Spark fellow here tonight, Chris Flores. Before he leaves, if we don't have a climate action plan, there's no reference for him.
No pressure.
No pressure.
And then finally, by October of 2021, we have to have a revised housing element. The overall budget for all of this, there are three sources of grant funding that come in. SB2 is $160,000. We apply, we meet their criteria, we get approval, we get $160,000 towards the effort. AB 101, that was a trailer bill to the state budget this summer. I liken it to being basically a companion bill for SB2. There's more latitude. There is no notice of funding that comes out. State HCD will be administering it, but strategically, as we talk with people with HCD, it's got a good purpose for us. SACOG's got a $100,000 planning grant. And then finally, the city's general fund is going to have to pony in money. So essentially, we have projects. One is the idea for a city, what we're calling the Winter City Limits Specific Plan. About $80,000 to do that. Climate Action Plan, $50,000. A programmatic EIR, and we'll get to that. But here's what the council needs to know. You can't adopt a climate action plan without an environmental impact report. It's critical. And as we've kind of put things together, the environmental review, you don't need an EIR for a housing element, but you do need an environmental document. If you do an EIR, all the better. But we're proposing a programmatic EIR, $150,000 for that, which inevitably will couple in a lot of the things that we've talked about the city's general plan policies and continuity. We've put in about $45,000 for community outreach, and much of this is going to involve the idea of bringing in professional people who know how to do it, multifaceted, and a way to try and outreach to folks. And by the way, the community outreach will be coupled with the other activities that are going on. So it'll be a way to press all the things that we look at: housing, the housing element, a specific plan, and a climate action plan. The housing element, as we've talked with the folks, there's no way around it. The city's going to pay for that. We tried to figure out how to fudge some of the grant money. It's not going to work. And then we throw in about a $20,000 contingency. When you add it all up, $395,000. So the priority policy areas, these are from the state, fall into some key areas, what they call the rezone to permit by right. The idea of establishing very objective design and development standards, which can really be the bugaboo for a lot of projects. Specific plans, and that's really important because that becomes the target, the specific plans, which include secret streamlining, accessory dwelling units. I think sitting in the legislative carryover for next year are probably no fewer than a dozen bills on ADUs. The state, OPR, DOF, HCD, everybody is viewing ADUs as being a real panacea. The idea of expedited processing, and we'll get in a little bit, but that's trying to knock out the bureaucracy. And then finally, the idea of looking at housing-related infrastructure and fee reduction strategies. And that's all going to be, those are what they call the priority policy areas, PPAs. With SB2, what we absolutely learned from talking with the consultants and the folks, we were encouraged that we should try and come up with a project within that area. And the reason for that is that as we move forward with our housing element and the 80-101 money that's going to come down the pipe, these are going to be very important themes. All right. So our SB2 project development, from the staff perspective, we took a very focused approach. The first and most important was addressing key community wants. The idea for outreach participation, for smart growth, to review density, affordable housing, and to focus within the existing city. There's been a lot of talk and so many people that have gotten up and said things. And we wanted to make sure that if we put together a program proposal, that people knew that we could listen to them. The idea of updating the key general plan policies. But we wanted the funding which anticipates key asks in the upcoming housing element process and with the regional housing needs allocation. We have to have a project that ultimately is going to blend in with where things are going. The community's got to want it, SACOG's got to like it, HCD's got to love it and do what we want. We want the adoption of a climate action plan. That is a very high priority for us. It's been on our plate for a number of years. It's time that we do it. And we needed to come up with a project prepared that would get us to that climate action plan. A lot of people are wondering, gosh, why is staff always poo-pooing the climate action plan? It's because we couldn't afford it. We couldn't get to that EIR. And through this process, we're expecting to do it. We had a consultation with the HCD folks that was very beneficial. There were, I think there were 7 of us on the phone. We went through the way that what HCD has done for SB2, because this is such a major priority for the state. I think they have 12 different regions within the state that they've broken it all up. And HCD has consultants who are there to work with the cities to make sure that you submit the proper grant application to actually give you advice on things. They were direct. They gave very good counsel. They gave very good examples. They've sent us a lot of examples of things to do. And ultimately, it's important that we do the priority policy areas. The reason for that is mostly based on the amount of money. If you want to deviate off of the state's priority policy areas, it's going to be expensive. It's better to fit within their framework. The focus, like I mentioned, very simple: undeveloped, unentitled, underutilized properties, no review of the sphere, no annexation. Simple. So the scope of the project that we're proposing, we're calling it we will call it the Winter City Limits Specific Plan. And the reason why we're calling that is that we get to check a box on the application that says specific plan. Check that box, and we don't have to give a whole lot of detail. So we were told just to check the box. Community outreach. Each element is going to have a community outreach element. As we develop the overall project implementation, we will include that. And the first thing on every list will be how we outreach. It'll include policy and regulation updates. It'll include programmatic EIR, which will also adopt the climate action plan in the housing element. We're really lucky to have Chris on the staff. Chris is a very focused young man. As we move forward with the climate committee, with the merging of the draft plan, with the action plan, with the resiliency toolkit, we're going to get it to that point so that when we're ready to pull the trigger on the EIR, that we just put it right in. Easy. And then the idea of housing, looking at density and opportunities. Kate's mentioned it. Lisa Baker's mentioned it. Mike McCoy's mentioned it. Everybody getting up at each one of the meetings was talking about the lack of densities that we have. There are many approaches to how housing can happen. Ultimately, it'll create a more by right aspect to zoning. We want the process to help jumpstart our housing element and the regional housing needs allocation. One of the things that we will include is the idea of pre-approved designs and plans. And these things can fall under things like the ADUs. And from the staff perspective, this may sound kind of goofy, but the idea of having a design competition. Not everybody has to have the same gingerbread and all that stuff on the outside of the plan. But if we can have plans that are done and somebody can walk in and pull the plan and pull the permit, no plan check, nothing. Here, you meet the setbacks, you go out and do your project for the ADU. And then finally, looking at fee reduction strategies. If we can figure out how to make it affordable for people to come in and actually do projects on various things, we're going to look at impact fees. We're going to look at our building fees. If we can have a pre-approved plan that somebody can just come in, you know what? No plan check, take that off, other things that we can do. So there's the map. We've gone through and we've identified within the city all the areas which meet the three criteria: undeveloped, underutilized, unentitled. And that, so we've identified all the properties. Something that we might also want to look at that's not included on that map are looking at some of our corner lots and the ability for some of the duplexes. I really think, and I'm not trying to kiss up or anything, but I really think probably one of the best projects that we've done from a product type and increasing densities was the Catholic Church project, the St. Anthony's project on 3rd and Main. Great project. It fit right in, and And we see some of the other things that are starting to emerge.
John, one quick question. All the areas in blue?
Yep.
Would all those areas in blue be included in that EIR then? Is that the thought?
In the specific plan, which would go into the programmatic EIR.
Okay.
Yes. But nothing outside, again, focused only in the city. That's what we're doing. So I would just include a really simple slide, why? To get the community engagement is really important. Councilmember New and I went to the SACOG Futures Forum. So anyway, a really great speaker, John Paul Smith or something like that. A gentleman from Meridian, Mississippi, and he looked like he was from Meridian, Mississippi. He had the drawl and everything, and he's from he's on the board for a group that's called Smart Growth America. And he gave a presentation talking about many of the concepts that we're talking about tonight, densities, sustainability, how you can put together plans that work for communities. And in his presentation, practically every single picture in his presentation was of Winters, California. Every single one. Saying he goes, look at this downtown. It practically had Rotary Park in it. It had the same clock. It had the Opera House. And the ability to take from a planning perspective and bring the community engagement to make this stuff happen is critical. The second is local control. Either we're going to do it or the state's going to do it to us. We just need to understand that those 200 housing bills that are still sitting in the legislative bin, the SB2 grants are saying, hey, everybody, we're going to give you the money to get in line on many of these policy areas. Go out and figure out how you can make this stuff work in your community. And it really is the difference between, if we don't do it, they're going to eventually tell us. The housing element, the priority policy areas that they've listed, those are all going to show up. And undoubtedly, they will be in the review criteria for the housing element. The governor didn't mess around with, there were 75 cities that did not have certified housing elements when he came in. And the first thing he did is he filed a lawsuit against every single one of them. If you don't have a certified housing element, you don't get any CDBG. They're threatening to hold back your SB1 highway funds. They aren't going to mess around. So as we approach our housing element, there are things that we can do that meet the criteria for Winters. And then finally, the outside funding. The idea that we can bring in $325,000 worth of funding, kind of the way to look at it is that if we don't use their money, they'll probably make us use our money to achieve some of the things that they want. And then finally, what are some of the key outcomes that we're going to get out of this? The first is a background report. And it'll be used for the climate action plan. It'll be used for the housing element, the EIR, and what that background report will do for the entire city is it'll identify all the existing conditions, data, and information. We'll produce a specific plan, and for us, it'll be, for the most part, a general plan update. It won't be a complete general plan update, but it'll be a mini general plan update. It'll include the community outreach program. And as we work to develop it, as we move forward, hopefully it's something that we can find an overall method that we can sustain on it. And then finally is the programmatic EIR. What that will do is for everything within the city limits, it'll bring our environmental documents current. But what it will also do is, from a programmatic EIR, you can do what is known as you can tier off of it. So if the city down the road, or I think it would have to be relatively soon, that you can tier off of it for the overall, if the city wanted to do a complete general plan update, and it would save a lot of money. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but staff's recommending that you adopt the resolution, and we have to submit the grant application by November 30th.
Questions from council?
I spent the morning asking questions.
Sounds good.
Questions?
I'll wait for public comment.
Is there anyone, Harold, do you have some questions for me?
Yeah, question, John, was there any discussion about eliminating single family one?
It's all on the table. You know, looking at the densities and looking at other practices, absolutely will be there. This is a great opportunity. Moving with the programmatic EIR gives us an opportunity to do that at the level of analysis for 150,000. If you add it up, you know, there's $230,000 that are going to two aspects of the overall program. It'll be the specific plan, and it'll be the EIR. So it's going to be pretty thorough in looking at other densities and to look at the zoning. But ultimately, one of the key aspects will be a updated and revised design guidelines for the city. And one of the things that our general plan probably is very antiquated on is housing product type. You know, you either have single family homes or you've got multifamily apartments. That's it. But there's other housing product types that are out there. There's more attached housing. There are things that can create higher densities, better living, lower cost homes. You know, right now, the idea of designing and putting in a single family home is expensive. You know, the cheapest houses out there, the planning commission the other night, the LDS review is an absolute train wreck. And why? It was because nobody could wrap their heads around, you know, lower cost housing. What does that mean? And, you know, unfortunately, in the design review discussion, it just wasn't accomplished very well there. And the idea that we have community discussion, we have professionals that bring in alternatives that could just dive this stuff in, and you say, here, you know, the idea of building affordable housing doesn't mean that you're going to build lower quality housing. It means that you do things which will create affordability by design. You save on various aspects of it. So, you know, as far as densities and zoning and all that, absolutely. We'll look at those.
I just want to make a comment about residential housing. If you look at the 325 acres in kind of the more old-fashioned 1950s post-World War II kind of design, a model, it would be 4 houses per acre, and that would be 1,300 houses. that doesn't answer, the forces that we're looking at. We need mixed use. It would be great for people who have a business to be able to live upstairs, or people that are working, to have mixed use, to have just models that are modernized, to bring us closer to being aligned with what are the best uses for the land that we have. I mean, sometimes when I think about Winters, I think about the difference between Winters and Sacramento is Winters is like a poem and Sacramento is like a novel. There's a lot of pages and a lot of room. We have to be careful with our room, because we have a limited amount, and smart growth allows us to be smart designers and have smart usage that answers the needs of the community. And I'm really excited about it.
I have a couple of questions before I ask for public comment. The SB2 is a grant application that we're talking about tonight. The AB 101, is that money already been awarded to us, or what is the status of that?
Okay, so AB 101 is by population. So we know 65,000. That will be what they call an over-the-counter grant. And they haven't come out. The way that the state releases money is through what they call a Notice of Funding Availability, a NOFA. And they expect that they'll release the NOFA on AB 101 stuff in early 2020. So probably like the first quarter of 2020 is the impression that we got from listening to the consultant. And that's where we dial all the stuff in.
But it's not a guaranteed pot of money at this point. We hope it is, but it's not. We don't have it approved yet.
No, we don't have it, but we, for the most part, we have to go and get it.
But the SACOG money is already approved.
Yeah.
100,000.
With the SACOG money, what we need to do is we need to just send a letter off saying this is what we're going to do with it. Hence the development of kind of the overall having a strategy and everything.
Any questions before I ask for public comment? Okay, I'll see if anyone in our audience would like to speak to this item tonight on the agenda. I think we have one, at least.
Okay, if you didn't get up and say anything, I was gonna call the fire department and
Welfare check, right?
yeah.
Here, Tracy, can I hand you this, because I'm, here, you get that one. Appreciate you for that. Right. Thank you, Mayor. And I'll start by saying, I'll start by saying my name and address, which you can probably do for me, but Kate Laddish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21. And I'll start by saying that I'm delighted that staff's exploring different ways to have money to meet the goals that have been identified by council and members of the public and staff, including having public outreach for there to be some real robust community discussions and to have money to do the climate action plan that's been on the city's plate for years, and to also explore some of the different types of housing and issues that have come up. People have addressed, including, I think, related to last week's planning commission meeting, and other discussions that, let's say, it's hard for single young people to, that's not a group of people who are going to go out and buy a single family home, and yet if they grew up in Winters, they want to live here, or if it's a couple that's young and don't have kids. And so whether, I think that the city manager referred to attached housing, so whether that's condominiums or different ways to explore that I think that would be a way to have affordable by design in a way that would also meet the city of Winters' good design review guidelines, rather than some of the other approaches that were explored recently. I'm also intrigued about the idea that this could include an update to the design guidelines. And this is actually a question for staff. Would this be an opportunity to have discussion about universal design, whether it's visibility or livability, this might be an opportunity to have that included. I'd be enthusiastic about that as well. So one question is, I just want to make sure that I understand it, that this grant application that would be due by November 30th, that this would be an application to do the specific plan, right? And I just want to make sure that I understand that the application isn't locking us into a particular view of what will come out of this, or like what our specific plan will be, or is the application the specific plan?
No,
Okay.
the application, seriously, is we're gonna check some boxes. We're gonna indicate that we're gonna do a specific plan. We still need to generate the overall scope of what the project's gonna include. And if we are accepted, then that's when we'll have an area and we're gonna establish the scope of what we're going to do. This isn't, ready, shoot, aim on things. This is gonna be, have things approved conceptually, and then once we have that, we are gonna work on the community outreach program. We're gonna work on the specific plan scope of some things. We're gonna identify the general plan policy areas that we're gonna really wanna focus on, and it'll actually be kind of easy. We'll hit on the land use element and the zoning and those types of things. So there will be an immense extrapolation afterwards. Concept approved, and then we will we'll move it all together. Because we're gonna have to, we're gonna be hiring consultants to help us on all these things, so we're gonna have to define what we want.
Okay, great, that's terrific. And then, if, fingers crossed, if we're awarded the grant application, I'm hoping that then council will have opportunity to direct staff about how we move forward with this, or just want to make sure I understand what the process is as we go forward. It's an exciting wealth of possibilities and pathways. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing none, I will go back and ask for any more council comments, questions. Councilor Lauren, did you have any more? She said you would save them for after public comments, so.
It's just funny. I'm really excited at looking at ADUs. I mean, if we had new houses coming in that had, sewers in the right place to make it easy, and we had design plans that people could pick from and implement, you can, house more people. There's so many opportunities in this to answer the question that I think a lot of people raised in the discussions about the north side of town is, do we need to do this sprawl? And this is a way to not do that sprawl and to look at what we have and budget the space that we have. I think it's smart.
Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Glad it went this way.
I have a whole list of things I wrote down. A lot of them, I would say this addresses a lot of the issues, not all of them, but many of the issues that were brought up at our workshop in August, for the North Area Planning Workshop, that I think this will help us to pay for doing a lot of the things that the public asked for. This is a good opportunity to do that. Updating our design guidelines is a great idea, I feel. Some of my concerns that I have is it's a very big workload. This is a lot of work. And can we really do it for this amount of money? See some of our budgets for other things that have been done, and it's like, this is a very big workload. It'd be great if we can.
We're gonna have to.
Okay. And then, so you're saying it would be mostly consultants doing a lot of the work?
We'll have a project manager, and then we'll have some sub-consultants that are gonna come in. First, sitting back and, there's some name brand folks out there that do this effectively, and I'll just use an example as the Complete Streets process that we went through. I thought that was highly effective. SACOG has people that they go out that do community engagement. There's something called Civic Lab in Sacramento. We've got the Institute for Local Government that comes out and does things. There are many resources that we need to go out, the local government commission, that can come out and help us in putting together an overall planning process that includes highly effective community engagement on things. We've got a lot of very smart people that live in this community. The idea of harnessing them in on this, and for a lot of the folks that got up on the 21st, I'm not going to let them get it away. All right, so you got up at the meeting. You're in, but you bring all these resources in, and inevitably, it really becomes a cobbling together of things. As we look at land use, as we look at the overall zoning, as we look at design on various things, we don't have to overthink it, but we can put together very strategic programs that we go into everything that hopefully people that eventually when you put together a specific plan is a little mini general plan. That's what it is. So you can do it.
So I think, like I said, this is an opportunity for us, as we all are very aware, we have a severe housing shortage in the state. The leaders of our state have put this money out there, made it available for cities that want to apply for it to work on planning for that housing shortage. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to try to get some of that money and help us in the goals that we had already set forth before they even put the money there. So it's, in my opinion, we'd be foolish to not try to get some money. So,
So I can say, Harold, you have one quick question for you, John. Here talked about the lack of trees is an issue. I'm wondering about energy in the future. You think you're relying on coming off a pole and wires and see ways for that to evolve?
And, I think one of the best things that's coming, I forget what I saw, but Elon Musk just came out with a really, they released something about their new energy roofs that talk about it. You know what? So January 1st, we have a new building code. Guess what? Hello, the California realization is about ready to hit everybody, because everybody's gonna have solar. All new homes and everything are all gonna have solar on them. And strategically, how those things go in, the types of housing types that are out there, that you can wrap into all those things, yeah. The idea of, we've already modified a lot of our public works standards to reduce roadway widths so that we have less heat. But as Councilmember New points out, getting the trees, getting those things included into it, the pedestrian orientation, how mixed use fits into everything, the idea of how to really maximize the land through increased densities, all those things, that will be the big modernization of the land use element. We will have a specific plan, which, by the way, my bet, and I'll throw this wager out to anybody, we will take about it, probably 85% of what's still in that housing element. It's a good housing element. but we'll modernize it for all these things to include the design standards.
Other questions or comments? If not, I will open it up for a motion.
I move that the council approves the application grant for SB2 funding.
Resolution 2019-47.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
One second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? None? Passes unanimously. Great. Thank you. Since that was the only discussion item, we will move on to the city manager's report.
Just real quick, today I got to go present before the PERS, Public Employees Retirement System Board of Directors. And somehow I got to represent all the city managers in the state. It was great. But they were talking about funding levels moving forward. But it was actually a very, I took a very positive, proactive, collaborative approach with them. It was the last item. I had a chance to talk with 4 of the board members afterwards. They came down to talk to me for some reason and kind of chatted it up. But the one thing, Shelley's here tonight. We have been making some very strategic decisions over the past couple of years regarding our pension funding on things. And today, it wasn't in what we talked about, but it was in what Galvin of Laney Milstein, she is the Assistant City Manager for Sacramento, but she represents the finance officers for the state. And it was like Shelley's policy checklist. She went through everything, and I'm thinking, okay, we were right there. But I'm very positive. The Planning Commission last week was just not acceptable. We can do better with the way that meeting went. It was kind of circus on some things. I just want the council, I sent a note to the Planning Commission, that's not going to happen again. It was very disjointed. We didn't get down to the things that we really needed to address on the things regarding Olive Grove. Olive Grove is not going to hit another meeting until they have got their stuff together on many things. The next Planning Commission meeting is going to be very structured, updated what's going on. The engineers are going to show up, and we're going to make them all sit in the front row and hold their feet to the fire on some things. But yeah, the Planning Commission meeting didn't go very well, and I apologize to the Planning Commission for it. Ultimately, it's my responsibility, and the idea that it kind of became a whirlwind circus wasn't acceptable. And I talked with the chairman, Paul Meyer, and I'm going to get he and I on the same page as far as how things go. And it wasn't Paul's deal. I blame. It was staff's responsibility to have to be able to let that thing go off. It didn't work. We're not going to let that happen again. That's it. No, I included the best news. Winners, AYSO went into the Davis World Cup, or not the Davis World Cup, the area tournament, which is actually a big deal. These are just recreation teams. These are the balance teams that we put together. 3 champions out of it. Oh my goodness, I was so proud. You know, when Winners goes into these things, people only say nice things about us. Our kids are good kids. They play hard, good sportsmanship. They are fair. And you know, other programs, not as much. But when Winners takes the field, those kids, there's a reason why we're the best community in the city. and the kids just go out there and they just, I got to watch all three of the teams that won, and they just represented. You know, there was, one of the games was a tie. And at the end of it, this kid, you know, they're all under 12. They're mostly taller than me, but they're like, but the winner's keeper and this one kid from the Davis team were just, it was a war between them. This kid from Davis was just firing the ball in there, and the winner's keeper was just making saves. And at the end of the game, the winner's keeper ran out to the kid from Davis and just high-fived him and said, "Man, that was great." And the kid from Davis was all jacked, and it's what it's all about. You know, at the end of the day, we want our kids to be really good people. And when the kids are, God forbid, having fun out there doing new sports, it was pretty good. So anyway, 3 teams, they move on to the section championships, which are in Foster City the second week of December, and then who knows? Last year we sent 2 teams to the Western States Championships. I always tell them that if they go, I'm going to go with them, and I'll go ref the games because I have status in the AYSL. This one's in Bullhead City, Arizona. I'm thinking, how do you get to Bullhead City except for a really long drive? So,
Have a good time.
yeah. We'll see if they go. So anyway.
How's the high school football?
So I can give you an update on that. I went to they had their first playoff game last Friday night. They played against Williams. They did great. They won the game. They move on to a playoff game this Friday in Arbuckle, playing Pierce High School. So they are moving on. They look good.
They aren't going to end up in, where's Lassen High School?
Susanville?
Susanville.
No.
Yeah, no more games to Susanville.
Okay. On that, I will just wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and adjourn the meeting at 7:32.
Gorgeous.
Hey, I'll bring that paper in tomorrow.
Sections of Josh's.